Magazine.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Nana for the Green Carpet Magazine here in London at the AFSIC investment event. Joining me, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Capital Development Fund, Mr. Xavier Michon. So you're welcome to the Green Carpet Magazine.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to everyone.
Yeah, first of all, can you tell us about the UNCDF and what you're actually doing towards financial inclusion?
Okay. So thank you for the question. So the UN Capital Development Fund was created about 52 years ago. And basically we have a mandate, first of all, to operate in least developed countries. As we know, about 2/3 are in Africa. So Africa is, of course, the continent of major interaction and priority of our efforts. But we're trying to work in terms of making finance work for the poor. And what do I mean by that?
Okay.
We work for supporting small and medium enterprises, and we see as small and medium enterprises as elements of bringing opportunities to the economy. We know that today's in Africa, 90% of the SMEs are private, run by on a private basis. They generate about 30% of the GDP. It's about 2/3 of the workforce, and this is basically where the middle class will come from. This is where the young entrepreneurs are coming from.
Yes.
This is where the ideas are coming from. This is where the potential is coming from. Mm-hmm. So we're pleading in our efforts, because there are different investors and players in the, let's say, in the investment space, to also pay attention to that segment, and this is where we pay attention to, which is maybe a little bit more risky, which requires a little bit more patience, which requires, let's say, a different understanding of the risk and the perception of risk. Yeah. And this is why we're trying to basically support via greenfielding of companies, fintech, for example. Okay. We know that a lot of young people are engaging. Yes. They put their own resources, their family's resources, exactly. And they reach a stage that maybe their idea is fantastic, but it's because of cash flow problems that they're not generating revenue at the time that basically they have additional expenses that they face, let's say, some problems, and so the idea is good, but they need some kind of support. We work also on, of course, incubation of companies and products and services, and of course in that acceleration. Our perspective is to lay the ground, lay the foundation so that other actors can join in. Okay. And so, of course, we don't only deploy grants and technical assistance like others do, but we also deploy loans and guarantees also, so that other actors can also invest and feel, let's say, a little bit more reassured in terms of their risk perception with the guarantees that we can provide.
Okay, do you have any interest in any particular sector in Africa?
So just to let you know that we're launching an SME fund. We have partnered with very well-known impact investor called Bamboo Capital Development Partners, based in Geneva, and basically we're establishing an investment fund for SMEs. Again, these are tickets that are below the radar of the big investors that we know, and that also are seeking financing, and we're basically establishing that portfolio today. The fund will be launched I think end this year, beginning next year, and basically these are companies that UNCDF has supported hopefully in the early stage of growth, and they're moving to other stages, and they require additional capital. So we thought, what is the best idea? Is let's bring that portfolio of companies that are dynamic, vibrant for the economies and for the development to a different space, which is basically private capital markets. And to respond to your question, it's basically companies that are in the agribusiness, SMEs in the agribusiness, in the financial inclusion space, going from fintech, microfinance, some telecoms, and remittances and so on. And then we have a little bit of small infrastructure, and of course energy, which is mostly off the grid, so we're talking about solar. This is where we have, I'd say, a direct relationship, and we can bring those companies by an articulate manner and the fund to capital markets and other investors.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, what about eligibility?
So our engagement with different expression of on entrepreneurship are done normally on a competitive basis. So we do challenge calls, for example. This is how we address an SDG via the private sector, and then we have proposals from private companies, and then we try to evaluate basically their proposal on the viability in terms of impact and effects that derive from it in the development, but also in terms of the viability of basically that company and the results it will provide and the growth that is expected. Those eligible companies are supported by financing, which is grants and technical assistance, and of course debt instruments.
Now, just to understand, is it a grant or a loan?
It depends. So in the early stages, when a company is still in the growing and pre-investing and doesn't have a revenue model, normally we give grants and technical assistance.
Okay.
When there is a revenue model, and then basically it's more scaling up, accelerating that activity, and basically they have a capacity to pay back a debt. Basically, we give debt, so loans in concessional terms. I'm insisting that we give loans in local currency. So basically, we absorb the currency risk.
Okay.
And basically, we try to bring other actors, namely local banks, but all other investment by basically providing a guarantee over the loans, or basically trying to support their investment in one way or the other.
Okay. What's the maximum amount you give for?
So the tickets, I would say our tickets are below the $5 million mark. I would say DFIs and others are more above that mark. And these are, again, as I was saying, it's small and medium enterprises, require more attention, there's more risk, but this is basically the nature and the mandate that we have as UNCDF.
Okay, so when that is launched, when the viewers going to know, those who are interested, the entrepreneurs listening to us, when would they know, where should they look up to information for the launching and application for the fund?
Well, we have a website, uncdf.org, so all the information about the organization is there. We'd suggest that you follow up basically the launch. Again, my take is mostly that the fund will be launched early next year. It's fairly complex to establish those funds and launch them. And there's also a municipal fund that we will be launching sometime next year. I would say it's second half. So we're trying to build basically products that basically will be distributed via private capital markets that basically can piggyback on SMEs, let's say good stories and growth and need for capital, but also PPPs under the municipal fund.
Okay, so just the last questions. From your experience, what are the challenges in the development sector in Africa?
Well, I'm a development practitioner, so I see the glass half full rather than half empty, and I'm trying to start from the positive element. And let's not forget that if you remember the Economist article in the 2000, I was saying Africa, the doomed continent, and then we hear today the statesman saying, country X or the continent is the continent of opportunity. This is where the business is. So let's see the shift there is from in about a decade or 15 years. I think that has to be highlighted. From my perspective, rather than seeing what are the complexities that we have to face or basically the risks that we can face, it's more, let's start by seeing the reality the way they are. We know that investors, first of all, what prevails is the perception. So if we can move from perception to a reality based on a proper screening of that market, of the actors, of that investment, I think it's a big step between those two spaces. Well, because we have staff on the ground, we can bring those readings and provide basically those realities to investors. I'm still saying that I have investors, and maybe not in Europe, but when I'm writing to them from certain capitals, they tell me, look, the first thing I go, I see where the capital is in the map. So let's move one further in terms of discovering that it's 50 and more markets, 50 markets that require a differentiated approach, that require more patience, but basically that today it requires a presence as of today.
Okay, Mr. Xavier, thank you very much for coming to the Green Capital Magazine.
Magazine.